Hi, I'm Jim. This episode of Task Force Orange, untitled Intensify Forward Fire When Ready Vassal World Cup 2021 Motti Pod Report, is brought to you by Admiral Akbar. Admiral Akbar, he's great! And the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and the contributions of viewers like you. Thank you. Here's your host, LTD. Thanks, Jim. This is LTD, also known as Dave, and recording today about the Motti Pod in the Vassal World Cup 2021, or at least my battles involved. And I'm joined today by our special guest, former Prime Minister of Australia, Mr. John Howard. How are you, Mr. Prime Minister?
Yeah, good to be here, LTD, and I'd just like to say that when the people of Australia don't play Armada, the socialists win.
Thank you, Prime Minister. That's very inspiring. So in the World Cup, we're divided into pods of 4 players. I've been placed with some West Coast Americans in the Motti Pod, who is, of course, famous for choking, and we'll discuss that later this evening. I'm flying my fairly standard Task Force Orange list. We'll talk about that as we go. My first game was against laser beams, and unfortunately the log file didn't work, so gross summary is to say he's flying a terrifying Moon with gunnery teams and all this stuff, and linked turbo lasers and intensified firepower and early warning systems and all that, and quad battery turrets, which is also very annoying against corvettes. So in my main game was to avoid that Moon like the plague as possible, because it can just delete my corvettes at long range, so I ignored it. I outdeployed significantly, and so laser beams deployed peculiarly, perhaps, with his, if you can sort of imagine, the top left of the screen is the Onager in the very far corner, and then the Moon facing at the Onager, facing. And the only way I can think about it is that he was concerned that I was going to flank the Onager around the left, and so that by putting the Moon there, he was going to jump behind the Onager, and then the two of them together were going to come this way. Had he faced the Moon the other way, I would have swung up into the corner and destroyed the Onager. Either way, I was able to avoid the Moon. I lost one of my corvettes at long range to the Onager. Yes, I turned it slightly too far. He was able to get a rear shot on me, and at long range, after I'd taken 2 long range shots before that, the third one, pretty sure it was the third one, killed my corvette. 2 corvettes flew into the side, destroyed the Onager after some great shouting and yelling, and the squadron is doing their good work as well, and Admiral Akbar and his final corvette coming in at the last minute to win the game. So thanks to fire lanes, I was able to score a significant victory. Well, I think it was an 8. An 8 and a 7, so it must have been an 8. No, it must have been a 7, because an 8 was the next one. Either way, a good game against laser beams, and he's doing quite well in the pod, and we'll talk about that again in a moment. Task Force Orange is brought to you by Turbo Laser Reroute Circuits. Turbo Laser Reroute Circuits, turning bad rolls into fine rolls, and good rolls into amazing rolls. The second game is against Kale. He's flying, and the log file worked this time, so I've got pictures. He's flying 4-ship with big squads and rebels and big Starglider balls, so kill. And there you can actually see my fleet. So here's my fleet: 4 corvettes with TRCs, 2 little whatever they're called, and some squads. 114 points of squads. Kale chose SensorNet. We played together in the in Vassal World Cup last year, and he chose my most wanted that time. So this time he said, I'm not doing that again, and so he chose SensorNet, which may not have been to his advantage. So I outdeployed again. So I deployed on the chose go second. He chose my sensor nets. I deployed on the top right. He deployed middle left. Turn 2, sort of moving into place. His Salvation on the far left won't get into the battle at all. Basically, I think he gets 1 shot the whole game, and I'm just maneuvering to get in front of that MC-80 Liberty and picking up points along the way with my strategic and sensor net. Turn 3, and we're starting to get into position to do some gunnery work and start shooting at things. The squads haven't engaged at all. Start of turn 4. I'm now in a position. He will delete one of those corvettes as he's the first activation. So he destroys the nearest corvette to him. 3 will begin chipping away, and my squads manage to get some shots in on the MC-80 as well. Turn 4, MC-80 is gone. One of my corvettes has been destroyed, as you can see. And now my goal is to try and destroy the pelter if possible, in order to rack up some more points. Turn 6, beginning of turn 6, you can see that the pelter is taking some damage and is in range of at least 2 of those corvettes to destroy the pelter. He did serious damage to my fighters. I lost 4 of my X-Wings and Jan. I was only able to destroy 2 of his X-Wings and a Y-Wing in response. Big Starklighter is pretty good. So at the end of that game, I scored 188. No, he scored 188, and I scored more than that. For some reason the number's not there, but MOV of 182 all up. So with the tokens, it worked out very, very well. The third game is against Unskilled First Officer. Name's fool you, he knows what he's doing. So Unskilled First Officer and Laser Beams know each other in real life. They play in their local South Californian meta or something or other, so they know each other. Again, out deploy the enemy. This time I out to bid as well. He chose my most wanted, and he had his interdictor, so he moved some rocks around, but that was fine. I had to choose the most wanted ship, and I chose the interdictor. Now I'll come to regret that. This game is a story of many great regrets. But I chose the interdictor for various reasons, mostly because the ISD is a Kuat, so Kuats, I don't mind Kuats. I can quite happily fly into blue range of a Kuat and live generally, which you can't do against an ISD-2 or a Kaimun. But Kuats are fine. But he's got EWS early. My Akbar shots won't work at long range against that because they lose a dice, and so they don't get the Akbar effect, and so on. So in order to shoot at that thing, I thought I'm going to have to get into blue of his front, and am I going to be able to do that? And blah 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 blah. So I thought I'll choose the interdictor as my target. The interdictor also has protection experts, so I thought if I shoot at the interdictor, then he's not able to move the shields to the other guy. If I can just ignore the Kuat, I'll win this game. So that was the aim, that was the goal, that's my thinking. It turned out to be very wrong. Because, of course, Unskilled First Officer knows what he's doing, he's not a twit, and so the interdictor turns away and I'm speeding in at speed 3. His command is Ozzel, and basically I'm going to be in a position where I can only really shoot at that Kuat. And I do. I proceed to shoot at it as much as I can, as often as I can, and it just does not want to die. So I regret immensely my actions in turn 1 even. I should have turned, because I still had activated him, I had the last 3 activations. 3 of my corvettes could have been turning to the left to get into the front of that interdictor and just ignoring the Kuat. But I went in front of the Kuat and set up my broadsides thinking I'll take down the Kuat and then I'll take out the interdictor, and that was optimistic at best. Turn 3, you can see that the Kuat is starting to get into range of all 4 of my corvettes. They're going to get shots on that Kuat. Janus Light doesn't need to be in blue range because he ignores the obstruction caused by the EWS. Some of the others are getting shots in on the sides around the EWS, or I'm just waiting for him to move into my blue range so that I can still get my Akbar shots in and that sort of thing. I think I concentrated fire on turn 3 or turn 4. I think it must be turn 4 I gave concentrate fire orders. And it was the only turn that I gave them all concentrate fire, and I regret not doing more of it. So again, turn 4, you can see that all of my corvettes are there. The fighter ball is not working well for me. I jumped too early. I probably should have hung back more. I should have made him come to me, but I'm not good with squadrons, so I just throw them at things and hope for the best. And my squadrons there, I tie people up while I shoot at their ships. And that's what they did. So turn 4, I managed to concentrate fire and do a whole lot of blasting. So you can see the cards on the top left of the screen. He's already on 2 damage at the beginning of turn 4. At the beginning of turn 5, I think he's it's hard to tell, but he's got something, I think it's 6 damage. But he's got the handing out tokens, and he's repairing. He's putting his shields up every turn, and I'm blasting and blasting and blasting and blasting and blasting and blasting until we get to the beginning of turn 6, and he's on one hull. One hull. If I had given one of these guys a concentrate fire this turn and done one more hit, or if I'd managed to ram him with something, or just do anything, I don't know. Or give him, the other option is if I should give him the more navigate. If you look here at look at the bottom right Corvette, he's going to get this turn a front shot out of his front onto the side of the Kuat once it moves up, and then he's going to move. And I foolishly decided to move to the left of the asteroid rather than take the hit of the asteroid. And I didn't want to fly into black of the side of the Kuat. That's just asking for trouble. I should have just rammed the bloomin' asteroid, taken the hit, not been worried about the obstruction, and had the shot for turn 5, beginning of turn 5. If that bottom Corvette had been on that rock, or even short of the rock, I could have blasted away and blasted away and blasted away. But as it was, the Kuat moved first, got behind the rock. The shot from that bottom Corvette was then obstructed, and Akbar doesn't work with obstructions. I only had then the 2 top Corvettes that are in a position to kill him. He obviously knocked the transport away. Captain Jonas there as well, Major Jonas, whatever his name is, to guarantee the accuracy. So yes, he blew that transport away and flew away at speed 3. In the beginning of turn 6, I've only got one ship in range, and he's going to activate first and fly away. But of course, in his activation, flying away allows me then to activate my first is to ram and kill that last Gazanti. So I killed a Gazanti here in turn 5, I killed the second one in turn 6, and yeah, that's the game. Basically, that's the game. Again, regrets. If I'd chosen the ISD, the Kuat, as the most wanted, I mean, he would have flown differently, but I would have got more shots on him as well, and it would have been worth the points. So, game of regrets, a game of bad decisions, a game of slightly poor choices. But all 4 of my Corvettes survived. I only lost one of my my transports. I did lose most of my squadron ball. So the end result there is 80 points. The flotillas, the Gazantis, and one of his squads, and he made 117. So it was a 6-5. And so that was that game. So that's the pod as it stands at the moment. I've completed 3 of my games. I've completed all 3 of my games. I'm on 20 points. So yes, I scored an 8, a 7, and a 5. Kale's completed his games. He's on 5 points. Laser beams and unskilled officer will be the interesting one. So one of these 2 will make it into the top. Perhaps both of them, because there's a slight chance. There's a chance that if it's a 6-4, a 6-5, sorry, in favor of laser beams, if laser beams wins a 6, then unskilled officer will come in as well. If laser beam scores a 7 and unskilled officer gets a 4, then they both beat me. But if it's any other result than a 7 or a 6 in favor of laser beams, then I'm through to the next round. So I just need unskilled first officer a 6 or better, or for laser beams to win an 8 or better, and then I'm through. So I don't know what the odds of that are, but it's pretty good. I'd rather face unskilled first officers list again. I think I'd do it differently and have a better go. So I hope he does make it through the Swiss. But that's about that. So thank you for listening to my live report. This whole program is all thanks to Biggs. Thank you, Biggs, for organising the Vassal World Cup. You're amazing.